But I do know that the disciples were at a point of desperation. They had come up empty despite their best efforts. And so that leads us to the last point this morning, and that is the value of the Lord's touch. So the reality is this: Jesus can do for you and me in one moment what we in our own strength have tried a long time to get done. In one moment. And so what this story that we read didn't tell us is that Jesus instructed the disciples to throw their nets to the other side. And then they spent all day throwing their nets and reeling them in and putting some fish and over and over and over again, right? That's not what the story tells us. In fact, the story actually tells us something different. It says that Jesus told them to throw their nets to the other side, and they did. And they had so many fish that the nets became really, really heavy, right? And it said that they were bombarded with fish. And scholars estimate that it was about 300 pounds based on the amount of fish and the weight of the wet net, okay? So imagine how different that must have felt, right? Pulling up the net all night to find absolutely nothing. And then one throw to the other side, and getting this massive load that they had to bring to shore. And the reason that we know that this didn't take long is, remember, Jesus invited them to sit down for breakfast. Okay? This wasn't an all-day affair. This was a one-throw catch. And Jesus did for the disciples more for them than they could do in their own strength, working all night tirelessly. Man, what a lesson that is for me this morning. And what a lesson it is for all of us, right? There is something about the Lord's touch. There is something about when the Lord shows up that we cannot replicate despite our best efforts elsewhere. We can't. And I am so thankful that God does not allow counterfeit attempts to succeed, because the Lord is the only one who is trustworthy of our trust. He is the only one that should be the Lord of our life. If we're the Lord of our life, we're going to let ourselves down a lot. We are not able to carry the weight of being Lord of our own life or Lord of someone else's for all that's concerned, right? We can't. Our job cannot be Lord of our life. The things of this life are so temporary, but the Lord is eternal, and his ability to provide never wavers. I'm thankful that Scripture tells us that the Lord is faithful to us even when we are unfaithful to him, because he cannot deny who he is. And I am thankful that the Lord's faithfulness isn't contingent on our faithfulness, because I'm not always faithful, right? And so as we look at our lives this morning, and maybe you're overwhelmed. You don't have to raise your hand, but maybe you're overwhelmed. And you relate to the disciples, and you are exhausted after a night of throwing your net to come up with absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. May this serve as a reminder that one touch from the Lord changes everything. It changes absolutely everything. Absolutely everything.